Most health experts agree that drinking water is one of the healthiest things that you can do. But do you really know when you turn on the tap and the water starts to flow if it contains toxic chemicals that could cause cancer or developmental problems with infants and children, even reduces the fertility rates of women? Now, if there's too much of that in this water, you'd never know it because you can't smell it, you can't see it, and you can't taste it. Society has been dealing with PFAS chemicals for 2 decades, but there is no standard in place for how much is acceptable in our water. Some lawmakers want to change that.
We've been at this for almost 2 decades, and I think we have enough evidence at this point. Again, we've been waiting for the federal government to set these standards, and they have not been set, so we think that it's time for state-level action.
Last year, Governor Mike DeWine asked the Ohio EPA to come up with a plan, and they did. A statement from the agency reads in part, Ohio EPA is ramping up to begin testing 1,500 public water systems statewide for PFAS during the first quarter of 2020. We plan to complete testing by the end of the year. In light of the bill, the governor's office had this to say. His press secretary writes, Governor DeWine has asked that Ohio EPA conduct testing to be completed by the end of the year so that policymakers have baseline data to develop plans and policies to remediate possible PFAS and to determine if any areas should be prioritized. But some lawmakers say that's not fast enough, and every day that goes by is another where a glass of water is ingested, which may contain levels that are too high.
The whole point of our bill is to get some levels set so that when we have specific information about where we have some issues with water supply across Ohio, we can step right in and begin the cleanup processes.
Local for you in Columbus, Jason Aubry, NBC4. John Montgomery was driving home on his birthday when another driver approaching him hit the back of a car waiting to turn left, forcing it into his path. The driver who caused the accident was on his cell phone at the time. John and his wife ended up in the ICU. For Sharon Montgomery, distracted driving took the life of her husband.
The worst part was because I was so injured, I was not able to be physically and emotionally there for my son as he was losing his father and for my husband as he was losing his life. I will never get over that part of it.
That was nearly 20 years ago, and she has been fighting to end distracted driving since.
When officers see people driving by them using their phones, not having any trouble controlling the car, they need to understand that that doesn't mean they're not going to lose control farther down the road.
The sponsor of a bill that could help says this isn't just about talking on the phone. She says people are buying shoes and watching videos. A woman from Cleveland called her office this week to tell her about a crash on Interstate 71 that her husband stopped to help with.
When he got to the car, he discovered that the man's cell phone was playing porn.
According to Lightbody, this is not a solitary incident. She says Columbus police officer Zach Connor has seen the same on surface streets in Clintonville.
We're talking about hands on the wheels, eyes on the road, and brains thinking about the driving. There are many ways we can be distracted. Cellular and communication, electronic communication is only one of them. Let's all be safe out there on the roads.
According to the governor's task force on distracted driving, having it be a secondary offense is not doing enough to curb the practice, and they recommend making it a primary offense. Local for you at the State House, Jason Aubry, NBC4. According to statistics we heard today, in 5 of the last 6 years, fatalities on Ohio's roads have gone up. Many of us have seen other people driving distracted in a myriad of ways.
I've seen people text, I've seen people eating.
Do their eye makeup.
They're on their phones, typically.
One was holding a baby.
But even they are not immune to the temptation of using their phone while driving.
I have, yes.
I have. I've been yelled at by my wife when I've even looked down at the phone.
I'm trying not to text and drive.
Governor DeWine announced a new bill Thursday to take the phone out of people's hands while they're driving.
What we're really talking about doing is changing the culture in the state of Ohio.
The bill would allow for law enforcement to pull you over for no other reason than if you're holding your phone while driving. Now, this could result in hundreds of dollars in fines, and if you injure or kill someone, prison time could be in your future.
That could have a direct correlation in improving roadway safety.
Like Lieutenant Moffett, Lieutenant Meddy with the Worthington Police Department says the tough part will be proving the crime.
We have to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt if we go to court that the offense did in fact happen, and we have to have some kind of evidence of that.
Now, that's not impossible to do.
We have been able to successfully prosecute some of those cases, but the burden can become very difficult when we're trying to operate a motor vehicle, record somebody who may be using a mobile communication device, and do all that safely.
If this bill does pass and is signed by the governor, a warning period would go into effect 6 months after it goes into effect. In Columbus, I'm Jason Aubry. For the past few years, it's become increasingly popular for health insurance companies to deny access to certain treatments unless cheaper ones fail first. Stephanie Spielman battled cancer for years, and at 15, her daughter Maddie had to say goodbye to mom.
When you're a cancer patient, every single second of your treatment matters, and they deserve to have the individualized treatment, and they deserve to have the best treatment no matter what.
But that's not what's happening in some cases. Insurance companies are denying access to new treatments.
For them to dictate a medication over another medication when it's in the best judgment of the oncologist that the first medication should be used is very challenging.
You may have heard this called step therapy.
Many times step therapy will force them to do the cheaper treatment or the treatment they've been doing for years and years and years, and to back away from the new, a lot of times is a more expensive treatment. And many times that makes sense.
But Hackett says not every time.
Stage 4 cancer timing is everything.
He and State Senator Herschel Craig are introducing a bill that would prohibit insurance companies from using step therapy in cases of stage 4 cancer.
Our hope in this legislation really gets down to making sure that we have the most effective quality of care.
As for Maddie, she doesn't want another 15-year-old girl to go through what she has.
Cancer does not discriminate, and it shows no mercy, and we shouldn't either. And I think that we're all coming together under this thing is a really powerful thing.
The sponsors of the bill are trying to get health insurance companies not to outwardly oppose the bill, but they're not expecting them to support it either. Local for you at the State House, Jason Aubry, NBC4. The kids here today all had one thing in common, an unquenchable desire to invent things to help others. Nearly 24 kids were recognized by their lawmakers today at the annual Kid Inventors Day at the State House, like Gabe Pollock Odoricio, who came up with a recipe for fire retardant paint.
I've never really done something big like this before.
Today's inventions ran the gamut from public safety like his to comfort like Madeline Winholtz's cardamom. She hopes to someday sell the accessory for long car rides on Amazon.
My mom uses that all the time.
There were inventions for pets like Sophia Taylor's Monster Beef Tug Bone and others to help people who struggle to complete tasks like Gianna Nichols' Smart Headband.
It's so fun to see all of other people, my peers inventing things and changing the world, because usually it's just something that we see adults doing.
Tackling a deeply serious issue was Michaela Carrico from Columbus. Her redesign of an insulin plunger helps people get every drop of the expensive and vital medicine out of their vials.
I always like to feel like I'm helping someone and I'm doing good for the community and the world, basically.
Speaking of the world, Kenichi Waddle from Northfield was there with his World Water Helper, for which he now has a bona fide patent.
By 2025, half the world will be living in water-stressed areas, and over 2 billion people globally don't have access to clean drinking water.
No matter if the problems were dire or simply an inconvenience, kids came up with these solutions, and they say their peers could do the same.
They would have a fun time coming up with an idea that they can solve and then sharing it to the world.
I wish I had the time to show you all of the inventions here today because the kids came up with some really impressive stuff. But if you want to check out their work, you can do that at the Ohio State Fair later this year. Local for you at the State House, Jason Aubry, NBC4. Many times over the last decade, this bill has only received the minimum amount of required attention here at the State House. But this year, the bill has received more than one hearing in both chambers. Meet Sean Miller. She's 11 years old. The fight over the Ohio Fairness Act has been going on for her entire life.
I'm a pretty normal girl. I like to play outside, I like to read, I like to hang out with my friends.
She's also transgender.
I've had really bad experiences, and I know that I'm not safe everywhere.
How unsafe?
When I was 5 years old, I hadn't transitioned yet, so I just had a pink backpack, and people thought I was a boy. And a 52-year-old man didn't like that, so he would come to my school and my playground and sometimes my house to tell me that I was bad because of the way I dressed and who I was. And my principal agreed with him, and so even though the police said that he couldn't come to my school, she let him, and she told me, I'm not going to protect you because there are no laws in place to do so, so I don't have to.
Aaron Baer with Citizens for Community Values says this bill should never get another hearing.
Nobody wants to see somebody fired because they're gay, but the reality is the proponents of the bill have still not demonstrated that we have this massive epidemic. Actually, they keep celebrating how many businesses have signed up to support this thing. If so many businesses are saying we support this bill, they're clearly not discriminating. So where is the problem?
In their testimony, Equality Ohio cited a 2015 survey conducted by the National Center for Transgender Equality that found 30% of the Ohioans surveyed who held or applied for a job were fired, denied a promotion, or simply not hired based on their gender identity. Local for you at the State House, Jason Aubry, NBC4. In the workers' compensation budget, the Ohio House of Representatives added PTSD to the list of things that can be covered for first responders. And some people don't like that. Don Estep has been a firefighter for 22 years.
Not too many people get that opportunity to have a career of helping people and getting paid as a bonus.
He says it was a great job until recently.
About 3 years ago, had some kid deaths. 3 of them in 2016. And started getting burnt out. Started having nightmares. Great job wasn't so great anymore.
And before he got help, he wasn't at his best when answering the call to help others.
I wasn't able to focus. My memory started going. It was and is life-changing.
Don received treatment for his PTSD from nonprofit organizations and from facilities covered by his own health insurance. The Ohio Chamber of Commerce says that's how it should be.
We feel that first responders should seek treatment for PTSD. They should use their private health insurance or their private disability insurance.
Kevin Schimpf says the physical requirement for workers' compensation is a great gatekeeper.
With mental claims, it's harder to diagnose and it's harder to determine whether it was truly work-related.
Now, the Senate is expected to decide whether they will keep the PTSD measure in or take it out of the budget next week. Local for you at the State House, Jason Aubry, NBC4. There is a bill that some lawmakers say will help save lives and make schools safer for your children. Supporters of it testified today. Mark Barden's son, Daniel, was 7 years old on December 14th, 2012.
Daniel was murdered in his first grade classroom at Sandy Hook Elementary School. I will never get used to telling that story or announcing that in any way. The pain that my family has endured is impossible to articulate.
Since that day, Barden has had one goal.
I will dedicate every fiber of my being to moving the ball forward and preventing other families from having to live this pain.
That's why he's working with lawmakers on House Bill 123.
HB 123 would make Ohio the first in the nation to establish a statewide standard for school and student safety programming by giving all middle and high school students access to life-saving trainings.
There would be a variety of programs for schools to choose from, and they must be free. Now, preventing school shooters is only part of what the bill does. It's meant to stop suicides as well.
We're losing people at alarming rates. And sadly, youth are not immune from this issue.
In Ohio, the second leading killer of kids between ages 10 and 19 is suicide.
When someone says that they are going to try to kill themselves, that really isn't just some kind of claim. That's really a cry for help. And we need to take these cries for help seriously.
The programming mandated in the bill is meant to give kids the tools they need to do just that. The bill also creates a system for those who have concerns to report them anonymously. That information will be shared with state agencies and will be kept private. It will not be accessible by the public. Local for you at the State House, Jason Aubry, NBC4. Let's take a look if Phase 1 of the China trade agreement and the USMCA are good deals for Ohio and its people, as it's been promoted. Senate President Larry Obhoff claims both trade agreements are pretty good for Ohio's farmers, small businesses, and our labor force.
For soybean farmers, for farmers producing a number of other grains across the state, it's been a rough year, and this is some much-needed relief.
I reached out to Ryan Rhodes. He grows soybeans and other crops to see if he's excited about the deals.
Anything better than what we currently were experiencing and having is a win.
How big of a victory, time will tell.
In the meantime, the deal with China still leaves billions of dollars in tariffs on the table for you to pay for. Now let's look at the USMCA, which replaces NAFTA.
It's good for labor in Mexico in the sense that it raises the standard of living for the people who are working there, but it's also good for labor in Ohio.
Tim O'Hara, the president of UAW Local 1112 in Lordstown, disagrees. He says, ultimately, businesses like GM only care about their bottom line.
They're going to use these trade agreements to their benefit, not really to the benefit of the workers. If you look at it from the company's standpoint, there really is no incentive. And, I expect General Motors to send more jobs to Mexico. I don't think Lordstown is the last plant that they're going to shut down.
Obhoff does point out that the deal with China begins to address non-tariff issues like intellectual property rights and currency manipulation. But just exactly how that makes your day-to-day better is difficult to quantify. Local for you at the State House, Jason Aubry, NBC4. Well, the governor came up short of banning flavors immediately, and it is something he is asking the General Assembly to do. 400 people who vape, work at a vapor store, or own one were in the West Plaza of the State House Tuesday morning trying to raise enough noise to get through to Governor DeWine and state lawmakers.
If he takes a flavor ban like the other states have, it's going to rapidly shut down the 650 businesses in the state of Ohio, and it's going to leave our adult consumers without an option.
Just hours later, DeWine announced he would not be issuing a ban on flavor vaping products himself. He wants the legislature to do it.
We have determined that the best course of action is to partner with the General Assembly to protect kids from the dangers of vaping, including banning flavored products.
DeWine blames flavored products for enticing kids to start vaping and wants to get rid of them.
They lure kids with sweet flavors such as fruit, candy, chocolate, menthol, mint. They get them hooked on massive quantities of nicotine and then make it all seem cool on social media.
But those outside say banning flavors affects the adults, not the kids. Kids will find another alternative.
Making bootleg stuff, and that's not safe or healthy for anybody involved.
Instead, they've committed to reaching out to lawmakers to educate them on what responsible businesses in the industry are already doing to keep product out of the hands of kids and how they can do more. All that chanting, possibly a preview of what we'll see next, with the ball in the court of the General Assembly, who answer to the people. Local for you at the State House, Jason Aubry, NBC4.